Hey, what's going on, guys? Dano from ModBot here, and we are going to be doing a review of the M3D Micro Plus today outside. It's a beautiful day in Southern California, and I could not justify recording this review inside my room. I wanted to be enjoying at least some of the sunlight before the day is over with. So again, this is the M3D Micro Plus. This is the bigger brother or the newer version of the M3D Micro, which was released back in 2014. And let's go ahead and take a look at it. So back in 2014, when the original Micro M3D was released, it promised a lot. It was a Kickstarter-backed project that did extremely well. And back in 2014, which is again when I got into 3D printing initially, there really wasn't that many options available. So to have something at this price range, which was, I believe, back then $350-ish, was insanely cheap for any kind of 3D printer at all. And most of the 3D printers were well over $1,000. So to get something in this nice little package that was relatively ready to go out of the box and promised a pretty nice user experience was extremely promising. A lot of people really believed in it and backed in it and supported this product. So I never got around to testing out the first one. I've seen photos of it throughout the years and always thought it looked kind of funny in its little plastic box. But it wasn't until recently when I knew I was getting this one into review that I wanted to do some research on the previous version. And there is, it seems, a lot of hate around M3D and M3D's printers. Basically that they just do not perform as well as they were expected to, or as people had hoped for them to. Also issues with the software. One of the main issues that I saw was the print speed. Apparently on the original M3D, it capped at like 20 millimeters a second, which is insanely slow. The slowest I usually print is like 50-ish millimeters a second, so to have something that can only go at 20 millimeters a second, you are going to have some insanely long, slow prints. So that was one thing a lot of people didn't like. Again, other than that, there was other issues with hardware and just gripes. And again, the M3D Micro back then, compared to what's available today now, you have a lot more options. While back then, you didn't really. You were very limited to like the M3D or the XYZ DaVinci, or again, if you want to spend a ton more money, then obviously you had other options that were available. So the main issue I was seeing a lot with the first one was, again, that 20 millimeters a second cap. That was the big issue with the speed. It was just brutally slow. So this one supposedly can go at 45 millimeters a second, which is no speed demon by any means, but it's a lot quicker than the 20 millimeters a second you were stuck with prior to. I also did read somewhere that they upgraded the like smooth rod arms, which look like plastic to me, but I believe that I read somewhere they potentially are carbon fiber, which again, I don't know that that's factual, but that was what I was informed by my readings and my research. So let's go ahead and look a little more into this printer. So I unboxed this printer, which came in a really teeny tiny little box. I did it on live stream, and I plugged it all in. Everything was fine. Took out the little plastic clips that had come with it. Initial setup was really, really easy. I then went over to M3D's website and downloaded their all-in-one software, which is like a slicer controller software, which is pretty basic. So after I installed the software, I ran into my first issue, and that was with loading filament. So with this 3D printer, you have two options. You can load the filament externally, if you have some kind of a spool holder, into this little part in the hot end, which it took me a while to realize that that's where you loaded the filament. I didn't see a picture or anything like that. You can also load the filament via under the bed. So the bed pops out, and down below there's room for a tiny spool if you go with their spools. You don't have to use their spools, but if you want the feature, if I can get this back in, if you want the feature that allows you to print completely inside and save some space, then you will want to go with their spools. But inside here, you feed the filament through a Bowden tube that goes out here into the hot end. Well, I kept feeding it, and I couldn't get the filament to feed out of the hot end nozzle, and I kept trying. People saw me on stream. It was really frustrating. I ended up having to pop off the hot end cover and actually use a tool to force the filament to go in. It just was not lining up with the feed hole, and once I got that through, it was able to feed, but that initially was really frustrating and kind of already was leaving me with a poor experience, especially when I feel like this is more targeted heavily at the very entry level, as simple experience as possible type user. on a budget, obviously, for its, its price range. And that was already kind of a pretty big turnoff, because your average user is not going to feel comfortable with ripping the hot end cap off and trying to feed it in. And again, I've been 3D printing for over 3 years, and even I had a difficult time getting it to feed in. So again, that was definitely irritating. So once I had actually gotten the filament in, I went ahead, headed over to Thingiverse. I downloaded a tiny little Raspberry Pi case that would fit on this build area, and I imported it into M3D software. I went ahead and used their slicing options, which are really, really simplistic. They don't give you details in terms of like what the layer height is. Basically, your options are like quality, excellent, very good, good, okay, low, and then infill, like strong. So just use like generic words with kind of pictures, so you don't exactly know what you're doing, which again, I guess is okay for a person that just wants to dabble with 3D printing in a very, very limiting form, if you will. For someone like me, I don't like that at all, because I don't know what the hell any of that stuff truly means. Like, it doesn't mean anything. There's no numerical values assigned to them. And either way, I went ahead and sliced it and went off to go print. It lays down some kind of a, it's not a brim, it's like a brim. Basically, it lays down these kind of like bars underneath your print that then your print starts to build off of. And I could not figure out in their slicer how to turn the settings off. It's possible that you can, but I, from messing around with it, could not figure out for the life of me how to turn them off. So every print I printed had these little bars that basically laid down underneath it, that then the print would start printing on top of. Now, I'm assuming that that's whole purpose is to help with the initial layer adhesion, because it kind of gives it some thick plastic to stick to. But when it comes to the end of the print and actually removing it, it caused damage to the bottom side of the print that was touching it on every model pretty much, and was a really big pain to remove. Some of the prints, I couldn't even get that stuff off, so that was a pretty big disappointment, to say the least. The case turned out okay. I'll have some shots of that so you guys can see all the other stuff, but it was nothing insanely wow factor with it at all. So one nice thing about this printer is that it does have some kind of auto bed leveling. I don't know how it works at all. Partially magic, I suppose, but there is no leveling process. It just goes down and does start printing, and my prints did stick to the bed, so I can say confidently that it does and did work. One interesting thing though is that when it homes, there's no end stops in here, so the hot end will move over to like its designated corner and just crash into the corner. Like, it'll make that sound as if steppers were skipping, because that's what's going on. It goes like gah, 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 gah. Not super loud because the frame's plastic and because they're not moving super quick, but that's how it homes. It just goes to its corner, crashes into it until the stepper motors stop, and that's how it knows it's home. It does work. I didn't have any issues with it, but it's an interesting choice on design for me, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of it. It kind of freaked me out when I first saw it, but that is, again, what they decided to go with. So be warned, if you have this printer and it does that, that is something that is part of the homing process. After that, I printed a few more prints. I printed out a Batman bust, which turned out okay. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't great. It was all right. I did the setting for that one below the best that it's possible on there, and comparing it to something like I printed on my Tronc CX5, completely stock with no upgrades, the Tronc CX5 just blew it out of the water. But it turned out okay. There was some weird lines on the back side of it, but you know, it worked, I suppose. And then I went ahead and printed on Benchy as well, and the Benchy I did with, I believe, one below the fastest print speed available, and it turned out pretty rough too. Again, I will have like photos and videos of that. It's kind of hard to see because the filament they gave me has got like a bluish, glittery, it's a pretty color tone to it, so it kind of hides some of those imperfections, but with the actual naked eye, you can really see that it's pretty rough. So those were basically the 3 or 4 different items that I printed with it. The prints turned out okay, you know what they are, but again, compared to what is available, it's just very average, if not even sub-average. So I'm definitely not wowed by the print quality of this printer. After using it for the last couple weeks, I've been able to come up with some goods and some bads. Let's look first at the good things. The printer's adorable. I mean, look at it. It's super small, compact, enclosed. It's just, it's adorable. It's a little printer that you can take anywhere with you. So I'll give it that. It looks nice. It's a nice looking little plasticky printer. The frame is all plastic, but it seems pretty strong plastic, so it's like, it doesn't feel, I wouldn't drop it, but it doesn't feel very fragile. Like, it's not got a lot of flex to itself or anything like that, but it is plastic, so that's a thing. Also, it's pretty quiet. I'm assuming, I haven't actually ripped open the insides. I don't know how hard it is to get inside of this thing, but the stepper motors must be pretty dang small in this thing, which means that it is a lot quieter. The only sound I think I heard was a fan, and it's extremely minimal, like very, very minimal. So it is really quiet, and it can fit on the corner of your desk without taking up much space at all with its tiny little 8-inch cubicle diameter. On top of that, I do like that they tried to make it dummy proof in a sense, where in their software, if you use their cartridges, you just type in like the number on the cartridge and it loads in all the best slicing settings according to them, and you have really easy settings and you're basically off and printing very quickly. Again, how well did that truly work? Not well, because I couldn't even load Filament correctly, but I at least like the idea of what they were trying to do. I'll give them that. So those are the pros. Now let's look at the things that I don't like or care for about this. So the first thing I don't like about this printer is the price. At the time it's $350. They could be lowering it any day, and even by the time it comes up, I heard it was dropping down to $250, which is $100 less, but I still have a very hard time justifying that price tag for a plastic framed printer that's subpar, especially when you've got things like the Monoprice Mini, you've got like the Ender 2, the Ender 3, you've got the TiVo Tarantula, you've got the Anycubic Castle, the Aina A8. Granted, a lot of these machines require some assembly, so this one does get that one up in that sense, but the Monoprice Mini versus this one, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to justify the price tag in comparison. So I think the price is expensive, definitely. Software, although easy to use, is extremely limiting, and I tried connecting this printer to Repetier with no luck whatsoever. I couldn't find any instructions. It looks like somebody created a custom firmware that you could flash to the original M3D Micro. I did not have success flashing it to this. I will say I only tried for about 20 or 30 minutes before saying, whatever, I don't want to spend that much time with it, but I don't like that they limited people from using other slicers. If that's something that they want to do, I feel like they should be able to use it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. As much as in the good things they said that the frame is, it's like adorable, but it is plastic, and I do feel like for that price tag of $250 to $350, they could have easily done some kind of reinforced metal on the inside or aluminum to just give it a little bit more stiffness and make it feel like you're getting your money's worth, essentially. But again, it's all plastic. There's nothing on the corners aside from some tiny little bearings and little baby lead screws and kind of smooth rods. So yeah, it's all plastic. As far as speeds go, it says it could print up to 45 millimeters a second, but due to that slicing software and not having a whole lot, there's no screen while it's printing, you really just get a percentile. I don't know what speed it was truly printing at, so it says it can print at 45 millimeters a second. For all I know, it could have been printing at 30 millimeters a second. The software is extremely limiting in terms of what it tells you, so it's hard for me to say whether this thing is much faster than the original one. I don't have the original one to compare it side by side, and I don't have numbers showing me exactly what's going on, so that's a downside. As I said, in terms of print quality, the quality of this printer is extremely average, if not below average at best. So there's definitely no wow factor in terms of getting amazing prints off of this. The fact that I had such issue getting Filament to load into it kind of throws the only positive thing I could think that would be a reason to want to get this out the window, which would be, again, extreme ease of use for beginners trying to get into 3D printing. Having difficulty loading Filament in something that is a feature. It's not even a feature, it's a basic thing that a 3D printer needs to do, and the fact that it had such a difficult time just kind of goes to show me that it's not very well designed or tested. So that, on top of that, kind of the icing on the cake is that this thing doesn't have a heated bed, but they do have a heated bed upgrade, which they sent to me, and I will have pictures, a little bit more of that. It's an $80 upgrade, right, to get a heated bed. So basically this guy pops out, which is just, some kind of plastic, the build plate. And the heated bed one looks just like this, pops in place. Although again, it's heated, so it's got like a board built into it. Well, The first thing is that the heated bed has its own power supply, which that's annoying having, I wish it plugged in somehow, and so that way it just passed through, and then maybe when you got the heated bed upgrade, they gave you a beefier power supply that could power it all. So that's the first thing. Now you got two power supplies. The second thing is the heated bed does not communicate with your slicing software at all, so it doesn't know how hot it needs to go. You plug it in and it's basically like a hot plate, essentially. So you plug it in, it heats up, and there's a tiny little potentiometer that you can adjust with a screw to turn to the right to get hotter or colder. And it just seems extremely not thought through. And the fact that it's kind of, again, trying to be this easy, cute little printer to plug in, it almost seems like a joke to me, the hot bed. The fact that, again, you don't know what temperature it's at, and you got to tweak a little potentiometer. Where does the beginner friendly and ease of use go? You know, along with that, it goes out the window. There's no way in hell a beginner user that, again, is getting this as like I want this printer to do everything for me, or as much as possible, is going to be able to understand how to use that. It's going to be frustrating, and it's just a poor design, and it's extremely overpriced, $80 for a tiny little hot plate. And I was just very, very disappointed with the heated bed that I received. So to kind of wrap it up, in summary, I do feel like this machine really could have been something decent, as I did a lot of other people that believed in it and backed the original on Kickstarter. And I believe this one was even on Kickstarter as well after the fact. I think they did a Kickstarter campaign for this as well. And I wanted to, based off what I saw, give this guy, you know, a fair chance. I never had the first one. I never had the bad experience people talked about. And, you know, I liked its little small form factor. I thought that if I could put this on my desk and use it as a kind of miniature prototyping machine and then take it over to one of my bigger machines, that'd be rad. But with its extreme non-ease of use and limitations, it's just not going to be able to do that for me. And I think that M3D has got a long ways to go, and this machine needs a major overhaul if this is ever going to be something that is something that I'd be willing to recommend. And it just feels that from 2014 with his older brother to now, it really has not come very, very far from what I've seen, which is just extremely, extremely disappointing. So once again, guys, this is the M3D Micro Plus 3D printer. I will place a link in the description if you want to read up on it or find out more for yourself of this 3D printer. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this is a little bit more of this is probably the most criticism I've put into anything I've reviewed on my channel. I just do not want to put my name behind this printer as something that I recommend, because again, it's just been an extremely just all-around disappointing experience. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please like the video, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe for more great videos. I've got a ton of other 3D printing reviews and videos coming up. I hope you guys are all doing fantastic and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys in my next video. Peace, guys.